Good afternoon, people, and welcome to this Rangers Review special. A monthly, it's going to be a regular occurrence, but it's a preview ahead of the upcoming season. Of course, it all kicks off on Saturday with a trip to the Tony Macaroni. We're going to look at the summer business and also give our predictions for the season ahead. Joining me for this special show is Joshua Barry. How are we doing, Joshua?
Good, yeah. I'm just been catching up there. I'm off today, but I'm just, obviously this is a once a month thing, so happy to be here. But I'm just catching up on the conversation from this morning, which I'm not too sad that I missed, shall we say, talking about Johnny's dinner last night.
Yeah, he was out for an Indian last night, so let's hope that his trips to the bathroom aren't pretty frequent today. A lot of comments coming in with regards to that. It was a good chat this morning, folks. And Stevie Clifford from Four Lads Had a Dream joins us as well. Stevie, great to have you on. How are we doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good, Derek. Thanks, Joshua. I hope we're all well. Derek, I'm here for one reason only. After seeing you getting asked for autographs and pictures on Monday at the training day, I thought I need to get out here more and get some of that action. So that's why I'm here. I've never seen anyone as delighted as you were, by the way, on that gantry for those wee photos and stuff. So I'm here to talk about Rangers and get some of that attention, mate.
Tell you what, I felt like I was signing for Rangers myself. It was unreal. But thanks to everyone. If you watch us in TikTok and what have you, then yeah. Thanks very much for that. It was some day on Monday. Okay, folk are tuning in to talk all things Rangers, and it's been quite a summer. We're going to kick off the show, folks, by discussing the transfer activity, the departures, and the incomings as well. We'll also discuss the big talking point: who will start as the number one for Rangers, not only on Saturday, but going forward. And we'll give our predictions for the season as well. If you want to put your point across as well, certainly do so. We'll try and get to as many comments as possible. Okay, we'll kick off then. Departure-wise, Joshua, there's been two big ones, of course. Joe Aribo is left for Southampton, and Calvin Bassey, as we all know, leaving for a record-breaking fee to Ajax. Those are the two notable departures. Leon Balogun has also departed, of course. Andy Firth has left as well. And the two loan boys, Aaron Ramsey and Amad Diallo, have went back to their parent clubs. Aaron Ramsey, of course, has since been released from Juventus. Of the departures, Joshua, what did you make of that? In terms of business, I think we're all in agreement that the money that has been taken in for Calvin Bassey was quite something.
Yeah, well, in hindsight now this summer, obviously it took a while to get going. Even at the start of this month, far away from the number of sales and departures that have happened as well. Rangers always needed to have a summer like this where they got some serious reinvestment in terms of players going out, and obviously with Joe Aribo and Calvin Bassey, that is, a significant, some significant fees recouped, and it's important for a number of reasons. Derek, obviously, the money, especially for Bassey, that will come in, is really important. But also, it shows clubs. I think you'll see that with Yilmaz coming in as well. It shows players who might want to come to Rangers that it's a really viable shop window for the big clubs to come and buy from as well, and that's really important when you look at securing the next Calvin Bassey, the next Joe Aribo. The fact that Rangers have been able to kind of establish that player trading model. You look at Nathan Patton as well. If you're speaking to Ridvan Yilmaz a couple of weeks ago and trying to convince him to come to Ibrox, and you're talking to him about the European nights, the opportunity to play for a club like Rangers, playing games like Rangers play, but then you can also say, look at the last two fullbacks that Rangers have sold, both to the Premier League, both for big money moves. It certainly adds, I think, a lot of attraction for a player that might be looking to take that step in between a Big Five league, or need someone to go and showcase their talent. So, departures wise, I don't think anyone would have been too surprised at the three of them going, especially after Bassey's performance in the Europa League final. Another thing that Ross Wilson said last year was that Rangers need to sell at the right time as well, as the right price. You look back to bids that the club have received in recent years, and certainly before the league title was won, you remember interest in Barisic and Morelos. it's always balancing it up with no money was I guess worth sacrificing that league title that Rangers won. Such was the significance of it. But this summer it was important. I think the squad needed refreshed, and the player trading model needed to be established. So Conan Goldson staying was obviously the big surprise. Now looks like Morelos is going to be staying as well. Kamara at the moment, because it's also important that you maybe don't sell too many players at once. Although I don't know what you think about that, Stevie, but on the surface of it, the money they got for Aribo and Bassi, very very much justified sales, I would say.
Yeah, it was so.
Yeah, sorry. Is there an element of disappointment seeing, especially Bassi? He's a fan's favourite, isn't he? Of course, but I guess for that kind of money, as a business model, you can't turn that down.
No, I don't think you can. I think if anyone had spoken about this kind of deal for Calvin Bassi 3 months ago, we all would have laughed and bitten their hands off. So it's been a remarkable upturn in his form. His form was good post-Christmas, and but it went to levels I never even thought he was capable of, culminating in fantastic performances, not only in the final in Europe, but the semi-final, quarter-finals as well. He was heroic at centre-half. Also, his performance at Hampden in the semi-final against Celtic was of that magnitude that started to believe that he could go up levels as well. However, when you put money into Rangers like that and offer them, it's going to happen. We're disappointed he's went. Joe Aribo, I think our hands were forced a wee bit in terms of the club have to get money in if they aren't going to sign, which brings me a wee bit to, we've spoken already about Alfredo Morelos. With regards to Ryan Kent, there's been no movement there and it's been pretty quiet, and I'm hopeful that's because the club might be further down the line than we know. And then that would really cap a pretty good summer with Goldson staying. Alfredo looks as if he's coming along as well. So all in all, I'm pretty happy with, in terms of the players that went out. You can never be completely happy in terms of losing players, etc. But the ones that did go, Bassi's unavoidable, I think, when you're that high and your kind of reputation is spiraling to get that money is good. Joe Aribo kind of forced their hand if he's not going to sign. So all in all, I think departure-wise, like Joshua says, none of it overly surprising. But I think that we spoke a lot about the squad needing a refresh. I think it's actually happened naturally because of these things, Derek. So all in all, with regards to departures, if somebody had told me a couple of months ago you would still have Goldson, you would still have Alfredo, you still have Ryan Kent, and you will have added to it, I'd be in a pretty good place, and I believe that's where we are.
Yeah. Josh, before I come to you, Curry Muncher gets in touch. All respect is lost for Johnny, who we discovered is a lightweight in curries. Need to find a new favourite on the pod. Johnny is struggling today on the old curry chat. Josh, I was going to ask you, in terms of the clubs that Aribo and Bassi have gone to, I've got to say I'm delighted that, I'm pleased that Bassi is going to Ajax. I think that's a top club for him. In terms of Aribo at Southampton, how do you see him getting on down there?
It was interesting in one of his first interviews he did where he said his favourite position was behind the striker, higher up the pitch than deeper down it. For Aribo, the thing that always held him back from maybe dominating the league, which he obviously had the talent and potential to do so and did maybe for a month and a half when Van Bronckhorst first came into the club, I think what held him back was that he just wasn't quite a killer in the final third. Very good at box to box, so technically able, but never really put a string together apart from that month where you thought, and maybe the end of the 2020-21 season, where you thought that his performances were of a nature that really matched up to the level of ability he had. So I wouldn't be surprised if going down to Southampton, where it's less about breaking teams down and less about needing to hit 15, 20 goals a season, if he does really well there and does earn a big move. He's also, I think is he just about to turn 26, so he's coming into a really important stage of his career where he needs to make it work for him. And Southampton didn't have a good end to the season whatsoever last year. Don't have many goals in that team, but I think he'll play on the right side of that four-man midfield, probably the most natural position for him, and I expect him to do pretty well. He's not going to be a player that takes time to get up to the speed, I think, of the Premier League. Very, very technically good player. will be well suited to it, I'm sure. But Bassey's an interesting one as well, Derek, in terms of what will Rangers lack in him going. You did need to sign 2 players to replace Bassey because not only of his performances in a game, but also what the versatility gave you at left back and at centre back as well. But you're not replacing someone who, if James Tavernier was 5 years younger and went to the Premier League this summer, to replace his numbers and his attacking influence would be nigh on impossible at right back, I think. With Bassey, certainly in Europe, I think in Old Firm games where, especially when, I think if you'd seen him play against Tottenham, for example, at the weekend, Rangers would have fared a little bit better at points against Tottenham playing through the high press. Domestically, how much will you miss Bassey in your home games against Livingston when you're trying to break teams down? I don't know. So, although it is a big loss, it was the right time to sell him. And do you know what I'm trying to say? That he's not. I don't think his domestic influence is necessarily irreplaceable. In Old Firm games, yes, but if you look at where Rangers struggled last season and what they need to improve on, I don't think it's a situation where, for the money that Rangers are going to recoup, I don't see how they could really turn that down because of where they needed to strengthen and hopefully in Davis and Yilmaz, the quality players they've got in to address those 2 positions. Really upgraded 2 positions in that regard.
Yeah. Right, let's talk about the incomings then. Stevie, we all knew that John Souttar had signed that pre-contract. He was first in the door. In terms of the defence, Ben Davis has also arrived from Liverpool. We all know he never got a chance to play for Jurgen Klopp due to circumstance, but he was on loan last season at Sheffield United. He's come in for £4 million, which is a significant outlay. And Ridvan Yilmaz from Besiktas, I think that's a player that everyone's is excited about at left back, 21-year-old Turkish international. The defensive positions, what do you make of those 3 additions, Stevie?
Yeah, I mean, John Souttar will be tried and tested, I think. And, Souttar will also, the likes of going on Saturday for Livingston, that's his bread and butter kind of game. I think he's perfectly tailored for that. You know what you're going to get with John Souttar. If you get John Souttar in the cup final that we got, I think then potentially you've got a really good centre back. So we'll have to manage him, obviously, with his kind of injury situation. With regards to Ben Davis, I think he's a really solid player. It's a solid kind of signing. Very pleased that he's here. It's a big outlay for us. So it's one that's going to have to kind of perform on that. With regards to also, Yilmaz is a bit of an unknown for me. Very big outlay for us. We're buying plenty of potential there, but it's exciting for me because as a supporter, I've never seen him. I don't know anything about him, so it's pure potential and excitement in terms of turning up to see this boy. We've got time to bed him in. I think Borna started okay with regards to his pre-season. He looked fairly sharp against West Ham and things like that. I think he might get pushed on with that. And remember, we can't. It's easy for us to do, but we can't really write off Borna because Borna's a player that goes up and down really easily. He's a confidence player, and when he does hit form and when he is in good form, he's a great left back for us. So that'll be an interesting battle. I'm kind of hoping that they push each other on. Although for that outlay, I would expect Yilmaz to start on all times. So it's interesting. I think we're well equipped, Derek. I think there's room for quite a few more to actually leave at centre back. When you look at it, Jack Simpson's position, obviously, Niko Katic, dare I say it, even Philippe Hollander, these positions are perhaps expendable. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a few more leave. I think we are well equipped. Goldson staying is the main one. I know that Goldson isn't infallible and infallible in terms of mistakes and things, but I think he's an incredible centre half for us in terms of his availability and in terms of his leadership. Put that there with Tav. I think we've got the solid basis. So quite happy defensively. I think we're well set up, and I like the guys that have come in. Although, I don't know much about the Yilmaz left back, but I am genuinely excited. It's sometimes quite nice as a fan point of view to get excited about a boy and wait to see what we're going to see. So I'm looking forward to seeing him.
Yeah. Stevie touches on a point there, Joshua, about Borna Barisic. It has impressed in pre-season. Scored a beauty down at Blackpool's done well against West Ham and Tottenham. I'd imagine he'll be playing Saturday. Of course, Yilmaz waiting on that work permit. He has to join his teammates and get integrated into not only the squad, but different lifestyle, different way of playing and what have you. So I can see Borna playing for the foreseeable future. However, with that World Cup coming up in December time, he want to be a part of the Croatian squad. Yilmaz is coming. He wants to play as well. I mean, competition is good, isn't it? But I can't imagine Borna Barisic and the Croatian manager being happy if he's on the sidelines.
No, and Yilmaz isn't, he's played for a huge club in Turkey with huge pressure, as we discussed the other day, Derek. I don't think he's going to be a player that comes in and takes and a lot of time to adjust to the demands. You look at the reaction, and again, I've watched little bits of him, but there's only so much you can know about a player before he comes and plays for a club that you're covering. If you look at the reaction from the Besiktas players, from the fans, from the team, he looks like a really popular leader, and at the age of just 21, certainly bodes well from coming over to play in a similarly competitive environment and demanding environment. With Barisic, again, I think we maybe touched on this in one of the briefings this week, Derek. He has had a good preseason, but the issue is that you can't count on him having really a whole season without any dips in form. You just can't stand still if you want to keep going and winning things, if you want to improve in Europe. And I think sometimes that does mean upgrading positions, even when a contract hasn't run up or there's not, if Rangers went into the season with Barisic as their first choice left back, it could go really well. He's the first choice, or one of the two Croatian left backs, plays at a really high level. Everyone knows his capabilities, but equally, you could go in and he could have a dip of confidence, and then you're kind of underprepared in that area. And I think stylistically as well, you still see Barisic cross and beep a lot. I don't think that's what Van Bronckhorst wants whatsoever. Barisic, a player very suited to Gerrard's style of play. Yilmaz is more direct. I think he's going to be more of a creator than a crosser from out wide. And 21, given he's a Turkish international, he's won the Super League over there. As I say, played a leading role for a club that there's a lot of demands over. Turkish football certainly gives Scottish football a run for its money in terms of the intensity of the big clubs. So everything suggests that it's a good bit of business, especially for the fee, although it's a significant outlay, as Stevie says. I think for an international that age, it's not a bad fee, put it that way. Hopefully it'll be one that's looked on in a couple of years as a good bit of business. And again, Yilmaz, I'm sure he one day will want to go down to the Premier League. He'll look at Rangers not only as a club where he can come and achieve unique things, play in a unique environment, but he'll look at Bassi and he'll look at Patterson, he'll look at Rebo, and he'll say, well, there's a really realistic route for me to get to one of the top 5 leagues, or to get to the top league in the world in the Premier League from this club. So it's an exciting piece of business. I think you can see Rangers, they're kind of shopping in a different market now to the last time that they did not a squad overhaul, but a squad refresh. It is different to going and signing players from, buffing up your squad with players from the Scottish Premiership to what they're doing now, although John Souttar's come across from Hearts. And this is the first season that Ross Wilson's really had, I think, I don't know if ability is the right word, but there's been a necessity to really refresh the squad. You could argue that was the case last season, but by all accounts, Gerrard wanted to keep the likes of Kamara, and Bassi wasn't worth what he was, and Patterson wasn't worth what he was, in the summer of 2021. So the squad looks in a pretty healthy place. Barisic is in a bit of a tricky position, but if it fires players on to play better, that's what you want. It's such a cliche thing to say, but of course, competition is going to improve players in games. I think that's just human nature, isn't it?
Yeah. We've got a couple of latecomers. Despicable Me says, sorry I'm late, guys, got stuck in a call. Sharpie55 also gets in touch. Afternoon trip just finished work. What have I missed? We're just doing a season preview, Sharpie, just looking ahead, looking at the summer business in detail and looking ahead to the season, which kicks off on Saturday. Let's move on to the midfield, Stevie, because the signing, I put this in my predictions on the website. You can go and check it out, folks, at rangersreview.co.uk. Tom Lawrence, for me, is an outstanding bit of business. I've went on record and said, I've watched him a few times for Derby. He scored screamers every game. He's already impressed. I know it's pre-season, but I think he's going to be a big, big player for Rangers this season. What say you?
Yeah, I would agree. And the thing that's impressed me immediately about him, something I said to Joshua about the games we were at, the pre-season ones, something that impressed me directly is his positioning. He instantly gives Rangers something that we haven't had, which is a natural number 10 It's easy. Like, I'll give you an example. In the game against West Ham, Glenn Kamara was getting in really decent positions, but he maybe doesn't have the natural instinct of what to do next when he's in those positions. Whereas almost instantly against West Ham, you've seen Tom Lawrence break into those positions and get them, and then having the ability to know what to do next, whether it was a wee slide pass to Kent or whether it was the run perfectly timed. And not only was the run against West Ham into the box, he diagonally done it so that he made an angle for Matondo to hit more or less across the defence, which is something that I think we've missed sometimes, kind of like static attacking. So I'm really pleased he's here. He's certainly going to give us some numbers. I think there might be a wee red card in there, maybe one or two. I've seen him put in quite an aggressive kind of tackle to try and block against Spurs, which I laughed at, and I thought, that's a bit adventurous, especially for our game and things like that. But he's going to be somebody that will definitely pitch in, and you know that as well, that possession-wise we get so much of it. There's going to be plenty of opportunity, hopefully, for him. How many times last season did we see, teams camped? I'm thinking Motherwell at home in particular, camped round the box, and we've got room to shoot, and we've not quite done it. I think you stick somebody like Tom Lawrence there, and it causes a different dynamic because he's there, and now you have more attacking options, which I'm hoping is going to free up more space. So yeah, Derek, you'll have seen him more definitely when you're covering down in England and things, and bow down to your kind of knowledge on it. But I'm definitely keen and excited that he's here.
Yeah, would you go along with that, Joshua? I think he's got a big part to play for Rangers. I think it's great business on a free as well. I think that could be one of, if not the signing of the summer.
I agree with Stevie's summary of that tackle, and Johnny said the exact same thing to me at the game. Sitting next to me, said that's the type of tackle that you're not going to get away with in Scottish football. I agree on Lawrence. For me, Van Bronckhorst, there was two main issues you had to address this summer. Obviously, kind of recalibrating the squad to his demands, so goal scorers in certain areas of the pitch that JR just didn't have. The midfield was very industrious with a Hadji or an Aribo in there. But the style of football was different, so you have to, flip the squad to suit that. And players like Lawrence and Tillman, very much out and out number 10s playing ahead of two midfielders. Rangers didn't really have that, in my opinion. Hadji maybe, but he was obviously brought in to play that right-sided number 10 role as well. A right winger, which he needed, and although Rangers haven't had an option on the right for a while, Hadji and Roof and Aribo were all signed to play that position before. So the need for a right winger, I think, was very much a Van Bronckhorst era problem. So you had to recalibrate the squad, but you also had to see, and obviously the proof will be in the results domestically, but from what we can take from pre-season, and was saying in a piece or on the podcast this week, Derek, pre-season maybe can't tell us how well a team's going to play, but it can tell us obviously what a manager is trying to do. It would be foolish to suggest that it is just fitness, that with football these days, that there's an attempt to model a style of play and try and build that. For me, the structure looks much better in terms of how Rangers, get possession beyond the first line of pressure. So some teams are going to come to Ibrox and you're going to have to break them down. I don't think the issue Rangers had last season was that they couldn't break down a low block. I actually think that's a couple of seasons old, that argument. The issue for Rangers, for me, is that they didn't have enough goal scorers in the positions to make the most of those chances. And also the possession out the back, after the first month of Van Bronckhorst football, where the surprise effect, I think, took a lot of teams off guard in terms of the runs that they were having to defend from the midfield that they just hadn't had to defend against Rangers for about 3 seasons. I think that the possession became a bit stale at points. Think how close together the centre-backs were. How many games last season did you see Goldson and Bassey passing back to one another because the midfield are trying to go high? And I think it just seems a lot better balanced with your two midfielders, your two fullbacks going high. So it seems like Van Bronckhorst has started to mould the squad and has really benefited from pre-season. And although that's a cliche, all the players that we spoke to in the press conference a few days ago were really reaffirming that the difficulties of coming in mid-season. And people might think, why is that? But there's just not the training time. You've got games every few days. The conditions in winter in Scotland, you can't really take players out for 3-4 hours on a training pitch. The squad, some are doing recovery, some are training, so you can't do it as a collective unit. Now you have 5-6 weeks where you can acclimatise a player to a new style of play, do lots of tactical walkthroughs. And I think you see the benefit of that in terms of against West Ham in particular, playing out from the back, and against Tottenham at points, the possession just looked a lot more fluid. And I actually think the midfield this season might be Lundstrom and Kamara. That didn't really work last season, but that was when one of them, Kamara, was playing as a number 8 and always going beyond. Now the midfield looks much more like 2 number 6s. And I think if they're both playing on the same line, like Kamara did with Davies in the 2020-21 season, alongside a midfield partner, I think that's when he can play the best football domestically, not when he's asked to do it on his own as he was at the start under Van Bronckhorst. So, and to finish off that, Lawrence is a player very suited to the style of play, adds a profile that the squad didn't have last year, and should offer something different to Tillman, because I think Tillman is maybe more of a creator, although he'll be a goal threat. Lawrence, as Stevie said, made that goal look easy against West Ham, but that's what Rangers have lacked, someone to attack the box, do the simple things well, and they've not really had that profile beforehand. A Joe Reba, I just don't think he scores goals like that. He's a different type of player, so to get someone in like Lawrence, hopefully will he'll score a lot of goals, and he'll score goals in games that Rangers didn't win last season. Let's be honest, that's where the league was lost.
Yeah, interesting you mentioned Tillman there. It's Rory puts a comment in there. Lawrence and Tillman, similar players, guys. I don't think so. Don't necessarily think so. Stevie, Malik Tillman was coming in and for, I wouldn't say criticism, but a bit of doubt from some of our viewers this morning. Not like Rangers fans to judge a player before they've seen him. But
based on what, Derek? He's only been on the pitch for about 2 minutes.
I don't know what it is, to be honest. Just gut feeling. Malik Tillman for you, Stevie. For me, on paper, the boys get a great pedigree again. Very much like Yilmaz, his potential there. You don't come through at Bayern Munich if you're a bad player. I think this is another brilliant bit of business. Of course, Rangers have got that right to exclusive right to buy, don't they, at the end of the season as well. I think it works all round. Loan for a season. I think this boy could be something special. What's your feeling on Malik Tillman?
Saw one moment of absolute genius against Tottenham where he got it on a split turn and played a superb through ball, which the fullback got to cover back. I think Ryan Kent was possibly running in it, and it was a superb bit of vision. And I knew there and then of why they bought him. I think stylistically, he's probably going to be more kind of European in terms of his qualities, whereas Lawrence, I expect Lawrence to be a wee bit more full-blooded and not as technically graceful as Tillman would be. I still think Lawrence is ahead of Tillman in terms of starting position, etc. at the moment, but I think Tillman's going to be one that grows into the team. He'll be one that's very handy in games where we need to break teams down or we need to score more goals, because I can see him pitching in and getting closer as well. So he's really I wouldn't say he's a mirror image of Lawrence, but I would say that he is he's just as capable of doing the things that Lawrence can do. So I'm quite happy he's there. I think he'll be a good signing. I think he'll be a good addition. And I know people can write him off in terms of what we've seen. I don't see how that's possible. I think you've only really seen that one glimpse and he looked like he's good. And by all accounts, I will say, Derek, Johnny also mentioned this morning, that the word around Ibrox is he's made a massive impression at the club so far, and people are really pleased with what they've seen in training. Very technical, very skillful, very, very good on the eye. Is the kind of player that they're saying and the kind of player I'm expecting. Now, I'm not saying Lawrence isn't that, but I just think Lawrence is more of a British battling style as well as having the capabilities to finish. So I think that's where your difference will be. And we all know that in Scottish football, how handy that could be to have the difference between the two, but have the same threat. And that's what I'm expecting from them. So I'm looking forward to seeing them. We need to be patient with our players as well. John Lundstrom's a massive example of that. So stick with them. Incredible. We're having to say this already, but let's not prejudge anybody. Let's just look forward to the fact that these guys are here. He wouldn't have been at Bayern Munich if he was a bad player.
Yeah, absolutely. Give the boys time. Moving on, Joshua, Robbie Mcondo has also arrived from German football. He spent last season, of course, on loan at Cercle Bruges. I think the cameos we've seen at Robbie Mcondo are very encouraging. It has to be said, there was a bit of concern after the training day on Monday for a scan on his hamstring. It was purely precautionary. He himself says he's totally fine. Remains to be seen if we see him on the plastic pitch at the weekend, right enough. But from what you've seen so far of Robbie Mcondo, Joshua, is he a player that can make an impact this season?
As you know, Derek, I always need a winger in my life to get excited about. It's my favourite position. I don't know why.
Have you taken over Ahmad's mantle? Have you forgotten about Ahmad already?
No. Well, I know it's amazing how fleeting people working in football can be. But Matondo, I put something on my Twitter page the weekend. The thing that stood out to me so far, and we highlighted this when we were doing a scouting piece on Matondo. Everyone thought it would maybe be a left footer on the right to allow Tavernier to overlap. For me, the perfect example of how Matondo will be used is that assist against Tottenham. So quick on the outside that he can also buy himself that room on the inside. It's the same for his assist against West Ham. The opposition have to always kind of overcompensate for him going down the line just because I think he is genuinely one of the quickest players in world football. Was there not a record he set at Schalke or something? He's certainly noticeably quick, and anyone who's been at Ibrox, you think of a player like Kent or Sakala is quite quick, but Robbie's Matondo's just in a different dimension altogether. But allowing him to play in the right wing allows Tavernier to attack the box, and Tavernier's one of the best players at attacking the box in the league. You see his little drag back for Cholak against Tottenham. Matondo again threatens to go down the line. Sessegnon has to overcommit and he can squeeze the ball back in. It's the exact same as against West Ham. He can also come inside the pitch. Can play on the left, but obviously that's Kent's position for now. And I also, I don't know how this will play out, but when Kent's played for Rangers on the wing since Van Bronckhorst arrived at the club, there's not been anyone on the other wing who can really mirror his impact and take the attention away from him. If you have two, it's the same at centre back. If you have Goldson and Davies at centre back, we're yet to see Davies, but based on the distribution that we've watched and heard about, I don't think there's a centre back there that you can necessarily trap and give the ball to and stand off, because I think both are pretty good on the ball. Whereas a lot of teams will have one centre back who's noticeably weaker on the ball, and the opposition will kind of funnel possession to him. And it's the same with wingers. I think if you have two wingers that are equally capable and equally dangerous, it prevents the opposition from doubling up on them as they do with Kent so regularly in the Premiership. So Matondo looks very exciting on the surface. Also pretty level-headed. He's speaking at the training day, 21-year-old, and often when you hear young footballers talking, I think you can tell who the more mature maybe of them are, if that's a fair comment. Matondo's had a lot of, I guess, life experience and a lot of professional experience for 21-year-olds, having went for a lot of money to Germany, done a couple of loan moves. Now ready to go and make his impact, I think, and had a good loan in Belgium last season, which should set him up well. So that right wing position will definitely be his. He's got end product, and he's not, the two assists that he's had. I know against Tottenham it wasn't really, but if you count it as a delivery that made a goal, they've been pickouts. They've not been thrashes across the box, and Rangers haven't had someone in that right wing position that's had that quality since Van Bronckhorst came to the club.
Yeah, Blue Jester, that was David Kerner. Blue Jester gets in touch. Matondo is exciting going forward, but he's equally exciting with the high press defenders get taken by surprise at the acceleration.
That's a great point. I just want to comment quickly on that. And I think it's actually the same with Cholak as well, whose off-ball work has been really impressive. It's an underrated thing. There was a couple of times in that first half where Rangers really rushed Tottenham. I think there was one moment where Hugo Lloris kind of scuffed the ball after Matondo closed him down. You need that. It's such a basic thing, but sometimes I don't think Morelos gives you that perfectly up top. I think his work rate, maybe not his work rate, but his work rate off the ball can be fleeting at points. Cholak has looked really good in that regard as well. And Matondo's pace, if he's closing you down, you've not got long to think about it, do you?
No, you absolutely don't. And nice comment here from David Kerr. He says, you lads have lifted my spirits with all your positive comments. I'm done in with this slit disc. But you three have cheered me up with your positivity. But we wish you the foolish recovery, David. Hopefully you're back on the mend soon. Stevie, Robbie Matondo, do you think you could take him in a race back a few years ago, perhaps?
No, absolutely not. Even in peak physical condition, I would be waving him by. But I would echo what I said. He's the exciting one for me. I think the acceleration thing's interesting as well, because Ryan Kent is very pacey, but what Robbie has, which is different, is raw acceleration, which is the initial burst that takes you away. So I think he can do great things. And something that instantly happened against West Ham was that he split that defence in terms of, because he was wide, it meant that they all funneled to one side. Lawrence then hit that position we were talking about, and Kent moved in. I think Kent will get more space and more opportunity, perhaps, Joshua, to do that. If teams are more concerned about, well, all of a sudden we've got him to watch, we've got Lawrence to watch, we've got a striker, Kent might just find himself in that back post position a wee bit more. So I'm hoping that by having more of an attacking threat, as well as your fullbacks, which we've already spoken about, I think there's a different dimension to us, and I think he'll help bring that. But I'm very excited about seeing Robbie Mcondo, even when you get when he's had the ball and the runs he's had, etc., especially against West Ham. I thought he was really good. He's going to get numbers for us as well. So yeah, he's the one for me. He's the exciting pick of the bunch, I think.
Do you know on Kent as well, Stevie? You've seen in those two friendly games, Blackpool as well, I guess, really varying his position. He was always, under Gerrard, he was always in the middle. Under Van Bronckhorst, he was always out wide. And what you've seen with Barisic left back is Kent do a bit of both. I think that's the sweet spot for him, because if he's out wide all the time, he's not going to score many goals, because we know cutting on into his right foot to shoot is not a strength. I mean, how many times did he do that last season and not score? If he's got the option to do both, and Rangers, again, we're hearing that in the press conference on Monday, the more variation Rangers have, the more different options they have to break down teams, to beat them, the harder it is to defend. So I think that's a positive as well, to see that relationship between the full-back and the winger develop, and it will allow Kent to come inside the pitch when it's the time's right. I don't think it suits him when he's always in the middle. I think sometimes you want him isolated out wide, but equally he has to have the freedom to come inside the pitch as well. So that's been interesting to see, and I agree that hopefully it will take a little bit of not only the burden off him, but the attention as well, such as hopefully the quality of Matondo. But all these things need to be tested with games. Rangers could go and lose to Livingston, and I don't think anyone will say it's a positive pre-season after that. You can only, I guess, talk about what you've seen so far. And again, from the pre-season games, from the signings, I think there is good reason to be positive and give the club credit for the transfer window so far.
Yeah, the other signing I wanted to talk about, Stevie, is Antonio Cholak. Rangers, for me, crying out for a front man, a penalty box poacher. And in Cholak, I think they've found one. He's another one that maybe he needs to win over the supporters. He did score, of course, in the pre-season game against Tottenham. I think he's going to lead the line just by circumstance, because the injury sustained by Morelos and Roof on Saturday against Livingston. How do you see Cholak getting on from the sort of the matches you've seen him so far?
I like him. I think he's very hard working. I think he hits the press from the front line very well. Already seen enough of him to know that he's going to do that work rate wise. What I haven't seen enough of him doing is we haven't given him the ball back to goal yet a lot. I'd like to see that more, because the goals he scored against us, if you think back to the one against the Throw, where he holds it off and spins, he's already shown, if we journey back to that kind of friendly that wasn't against Sunderland, he was a lot of time he held the ball up and used his strength. I don't think we've seen that as such the last couple of games. I've got no doubt the boy can finish. We haven't really given him a lot of opportunities either. So I get he has to win people over. I get that, but we also have to not judge him in what Alfredo does and what Alfredo brings, because Alfredo is in many ways a freak of nature in terms of when he's on his game and how he can dominate defences. That's a real trait that, if you're looking for guys like that, you're looking at the times of Diego Costa type of style of forward. Now, Alfredo's not that, but this is how rare getting a guy that can dominate defences are. So we can't judge Cholak on what Alfredo has done. We need to judge him on himself. If we look at his pre-season so far, he's done pretty well. He's shown up well. He's got a good work rate. and he's not an expensive buy either. So I think he's somebody that's going to prove value for money. We need to get him chances. We need to get the ball in. We need to flight it in and see what he's got to offer as well. So again, I would say that I'm looking forward to seeing more of him. And then, boys, as you both know, he grabs a couple on Saturday, he's a hero, and he's off and running. So that's how easy it can happen for a forward. So we need to, again, I feel like I'm the lecturing dad of us all, but we need to not judge him so quickly and judge him on others. Let's give him the chance, give him the opportunities. I'd like to see us use him slightly differently than we have done so far. That's my only kind of reservation about it. But he'll do well for Rangers and he'll get numbers.
Yeah, as Stevie mentioned there, Joshua, is relatively low cost. I did forget about one of the departures. Cedric Eaton, of course, left to join Young Boys, and the money that was taken in from that is pretty much paid for Cholak to come in, and he looks to me better suited to this Rangers side. I've got to admit, I like the look of him as well. I think he needs service right enough, and I think he will get that at Rangers. I can see him scoring a barrel load of goals. I've actually put in my piece on the website. I wouldn't be surprised to see him hit 20 goals. Where was the last Rangers player you've seen hit 20 goals? I've been crying out for someone that can do so. Morelos doesn't. Can Cholak do it?
We've not really, West Ham and Tottenham are not the level of opposition he's going to be facing week in, week out in the Premiership. He's obviously still adjusting to the style of play. You can see, and I know, having spoken to a few people about it, he's still adjusting to the demands and I guess the specifications of Van Bronckhorst's role, where he doesn't need to necessarily run the channels or even drop in too deep. He needs to be that physical outlet and be central. I think you've seen a couple of times against Tottenham when Tavernier and Goldson, Rangers always really build out on the right, and they're very good at that. Did it against West Ham as well. There was a couple of occasions where the defence wanted him over to provide that out ball straight up the pitch that he wasn't there. But I can't take, this is what pre-season is for. The example me and Johnny were using was Darwin Núñez, who was getting criticism for his pre-season form.
Yeah.
When, pre-season again, you can read stuff into it. You can learn from it, in my opinion, little bits, but also you have to asterisk it with the fact that players are learning about their environment and about their teammates. What you would say about Cholak is the ability to stretch play. I thought his touches against Tottenham were really good, apart from the one for the second goal that Harry Kane scored in a good position to finish that goal. But you need to give him a few games in the Premiership to see how he's going to do. Obviously, I think it's definitely an upgrade in Itten, and I think stylistically it's far more suited to Van Bronckhorst's football, because Itten just couldn't play that isolated role on his own. I don't think he was as strong, and I think Cholak's a little bit more of a dynamic player than him. And do you know what else it will do? It will push Morelos, because if Cholak comes in and scores a couple of goals, I don't think anyone would be surprised if that's the type of thing that just pushes Morelos on to be at his very best. We know, what type of player he is. He wears his heart on his sleeve at all times, and he's not had someone to really compete with him, really ever. He's had Defoe come in, but it's a different stage of his career. Ruth came in, but obviously they could play together. So there's not really been a player who's came in and just at the peak of his career vying for that same position as Morelos, who's a realistic threat, and Cholak should do that. There's enough games for both of them to go round, but again, it's not a bad situation to have if you're playing one of them and you can bring another off the bench at 60 minutes. I don't think they'll really play together that much, and it'll be interesting to see what happens behind the pair of them. Ruth obviously injured at the moment. Is there any possibility that he goes out and Rangers bring someone else in? Because for all the positives about the signings, Rangers are still going into the season at the moment with just one fit striker, which isn't, I think, what the manager wants, because he's so, I guess, dependent on his big physical number 9. He's always had them at Feyenoord. He had to adapt last season, but he doesn't have Joe Rebo to play that false 9 role this year. Although I think, as we discussed this week, Derek, maybe Lawrence or Thielman could play that role kind of as emergency cover.
Yeah, well, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst did tell us in Portugal he doesn't want another situation like that when they don't have an actual striker up top. Stevie, that is a summer business. Would you like a further reinforcements in the striking area, or are you quite comfortable with the prospect? Of course, we've seen Alfredo Morelos taking part in the training session on Monday. Would you like to see further strengthening in the forward areas?
I think the squad's really top heavy at the moment, so my priority would be to get maybe 6 out. I think that's a fair assessment. And it's not because they're all bad players. It's just because with some of them we've moved on, and with others, they're surplus to requirements. Would have taken our striker, not for the sake of just having him as third choice, but if you could trade probably Kemar Roof for a fit version of Kemar Roof, you would take that 100%, because I still think Kemar Roof's an outstanding striker. He scored some fantastic goals, but he's not reliable. So there's that. That's a bit of a dilemma for me. If there is a taker for Roof, I would do that business and replace him. Yes. Overall, I'm quite happy with the numbers. You've got to remember that guys like Fashion Sakala, Scott Wright will still pitch in with numbers. They're not starters. They're not, but I get that. But we still have Fashion Sakala, I think, had 19 goal involvements last year, 12 goals possibly, I think was his total. He causes that unpredictable kind of mayhem when he comes on. In fact, somebody's just said the exact same thing. So he will still get numbers for Rangers, not as a striker perhaps. I can see him doing a bit more on the left side with Ryan Kent. Might take a wee bit of pressure off Ryan Kent as well at times. I'm not suggesting we rest Kent or anything, but I'm talking about more end of game. So he'll still get numbers. He'll still pitch in. But in terms of would I go one more, it would really have to be for people out first.
Yeah. You sort of tend to agree, Joshua. For me, I think defensively, there's a number of players that Rangers, I think, could afford to get rid of. I think, namely, Niko Katic. I don't think I can see him forcing his way in. Philip Hollander, although who's going to take him with his injury record? Jack Simpson hasn't had a look in either. Midfield areas, do you look at the likes of guys that should they be sticking around? Should they go and further their careers? I'm thinking Stephen Kelly. Even moving to the more forward areas, Glenn Middleton is another one. There has to be some movement in terms of departures, doesn't there?
Yeah, and maybe ones that happen more towards the end of the window, as squads start to become a bit more settled and whatnot, and it becomes clear who the first choice is. I agree with you. I can't see Katic playing, especially with someone like Sands. You see what his passing out the back can bring in. I think there's still a question mark over how he can physically compete one-on-one against defenders. Even the Queen's Park package, I thought you seen kind of he didn't get maybe a little bit loose on his man as I think it was the second goal, the boy lobbed Robbie McCrory. So Sakala, just on Sakala, Stevie's point with Sakala, you do forget that. I mean, I was speaking about, I can't remember who I was speaking to about this. We all speak about Rangers so much that it all blends into one. Sakala's goals per minute, goals per game ratio is pretty good. And to repeat what everyone knows about him, he is unpolished and he is frustrating. But how much are you going to get from him, and can you replace those 19 goal involvements for that money? That's the question, because you've got other profiles in the squad who can go and do it in a European game. Sakala isn't in there to provide for his necessarily his technical quality. I think it's for, again, that Motherwell away example, Derek, that I always use, where he is just effective. So I'm not overly keen to chase Sakala out the door, although he's not. He showed his limitations at Rangers, but his goals per game ratio has been okay. And you look at the goal at Parkhead as well. He has contributions in him, but I think definitely off the left. I don't think he's a central striker in a dominant team at all. But behind, we're saying only one fit striker. You also have Sakala who can play there. You have Thielman. You have Lovelace, who I've seen for the B team on Tuesday night, and he was only on the pitch for about 10 minutes. But you've seen his quality. You've seen how physical he is for 16. Scored after genuinely about 25 seconds, I think it was. I don't think he'll be in the B team too long without getting some minutes in the first team.
Yeah, Derek Gray sort of agrees with you there. Josh says young Lovelace looks levels above the players in that lower league. I did see his goal. It does look almost like Elf when he goes back to school. He looks massive, doesn't he? I think he's going to be in and around the first team before too long. Let's move on, Stevie. We're touching on Alfredo Morelos. Of course, he and Ryan Kent's contract still up in the air. We believe discussions ongoing. Quite encouraged by Giovanni van Bronckhorst's comments on Monday with regards to Alfredo's contract, saying talks have been positive. I think it would be a massive boost if both were to sign, especially I think Morelos. We've seen how much he's loved by the supporters and what have you. I think he loves it at Rangers as well. I think that could be huge if he puts pen to paper. But do you tend to agree?
Yeah. Listen, I still think this is Alfredo's team. He's that vital. When he plays, we tend to play. When he plays, we tend to get good results. And I think he's settled here. I think he knows he's loved here. And I'll not begrudge Alfredo when it comes to it if he gets that magnificent move, similar to Bassi going to Ajax. I think that Alfredo deserves a team of that stature. But while he's here, I would love to see Alfredo have the complete season. And this isn't meaning to be a criticism of Alfredo, but we've seen it in bursts. He's had a tremendous 6-month spell, then maybe goes off the boil a wee bit after New Year or etc. or something happens and it doesn't focus him quite the way he should. I would love to see Alfredo Morelos have a complete year, and I think he could get the serious numbers. And in terms of league-wise as well, he's still to do that. He's still to get the 20 league goals. He's still to really kick on that way. And it's not a criticism. Please don't mix it up with that. I just think that I look at Alfredo Morelos and I think he's that good that he still has more to give, Derek, in terms of numbers and in terms of what he can bring. Alfredo renewing is massive. I'm confident that it will be done. As far as I'm aware, judging by what's been said, it's quite close. So that's huge news for the club. It's fantastic. As I said about Kent before, the fact that we haven't heard too much on Ryan Kent leads me to hope that if it was a situation like Joe Aribo, where I think it was pretty common knowledge that he wasn't going to renew or sign on. So I think with Kent, we haven't heard anything like that, and I'm hopeful that that's pointing to the direction that things are comfortable with him and they're heading towards. Maybe even it's a situation like we'll get Alfredo tied down, then we'll come to you because we know what we want and we're going to match it, so we're comfortable with that. So I'm hopeful that would be tremendous business to get Goldson, Kent, Morelos tied up and keep them is the whole base for it. But with regards to Alfredo, he's still everyone's favourite, isn't he? He's still the one that we look to. He's still the man of this team, in my opinion. And in terms of what we've discussed, he can be the game changer. How he dominates, especially in Europe, he loves it in Europe. He deserves a wee shot at the Champions League as well. So delighted that it's looking positive and it's heading towards that, Derek. It's fantastic news.
Yeah, I agree with you, Steve. I'd love to see him strutting his stuff in the Champions League at Ibrox. Let's move on, lads. Joshua, I just wanted to touch on another issue that's sort of a big talking point at the moment amongst Rangers supporters. That is who will take the number 1 jersey going forward. Of course, Alan Mcgregor signed that contract extension. I think surprisingly, don't think many expected that, especially after the gesture in the Scottish Cup final when he came on for the last few moments of that game. But he is there alongside John McLaughlin, Robbie McCrory there as well, of course. Who's your number 1 at the Tony Macaroni and going forward, John McLaughlin or Alan McGregor?
McLaughlin for me, no question, mainly because of what he does with the ball at his feet. As much as anything, aside from the fact that I think he's more commanding, McLaughlin with the ball at his feet just adds so much for me. I wrote about this last season. I actually was thinking I might put it on my Twitter because I think it's really relevant going into this season. The kind of knock-on effect of having a goalkeeper who's confident with the ball at their feet and what that does for the rest of the team. McLaughlin doesn't allow you to just invite the press and play through it, which will only happen in certain games, but he also just allows you to beat that first line of pressure. The centre-backs can go so much wider. The first phase is possession, and Van Bronckhorst, he said recently in a press conference that McGregor is I think he said he's comfortable with the ball at his feet, but I don't think anyone would say he's as comfortable as McLaughlin is with the ball at his feet. So I think there's a time for everything in football. McGregor has re-signed and is here for another year. I thought his saves were fantastic against Tottenham, but equally he played Rangers into trouble 2 or 3 times. And for Rangers to, I think, keep evolving, they need to have a goalkeeper who's comfortable with the ball at his feet and can contribute. John McLaughlin, I don't think he even played a long pass against West Ham on Wednesday. Not that he'll never do that, But it is just like having an extra outfielder at points deep in the pitch. So it has to be Mclaughlin for me, and not just because of as we said recently, Derek, Mcgregor wasn't in the red last season. Statistically, he still saved more goals than he cost, much less than the season before. But aside from that whole conversation, I just really, really think that Rangers need a goalkeeper who's comfortable with the ball at his feet. I think it makes them look like a much, much better team. Yeah,
Matt Andrews makes a case for Alan McGregor. Without him, we wouldn't have gotten to the Europa League final, which is a fair point. Stevie, where do you stand on the McGregor-Mclaughlin debate? And there's some comments coming in as well saying, this one from Amy McPhee, she says, not buying a number one could be our downfall. So where do you stand on that? Are you quite happy with McLaughlin taking over, or are you team McGregor?
No, I'm no disrespect to Alan, because he is arguably one of our best keepers that we've ever had. Controversially, John McLaughlin for domestic, Alan McGregor for Europe might be where I kind of am in terms of, I agree with the comment before that Alan McGregor in Europe, we don't tend to get the high balls, we don't tend to dominate pressure as much as we do in Scotland, where McLaughlin might be better. Alan McGregor was tremendous in the European run last year. Is it a controversial thing to say? Maybe they might look at that way. In terms of Saturday, it's got to be McLaughlin for me. Very much like what Joshua says, with ball at his feet in the press, especially with high balls into the box. I just think domestically he suits us more than Alan McGregor does. However, the caveat to all this is that only not last season but year before, Alan McGregor was our player of the year. Arguably, he was outstanding. He's match fit. He is athletically fit. He gives everything in training. I've spoken to a couple of ex-professionals, close pal of mine, close pal Alan McGregor, Peter McDonald, is saying to me that Alan McGregor will prove everyone wrong, again this season. And I've got to say that if anyone can prove people wrong, it's Alan McGregor. So come Saturday, it's a huge call for Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. I think the majority of social media would choose John McLaughlin. In terms of signing another keeper, I wouldn't say it's necessary, and that might be something that comes back to bite me. But if you're looking to get better than John McLaughlin or Alan McGregor, you're spending money that we don't need to spend as yet. It might be that Rangers have earmarked next season somebody to go and get that might be coming out of contract, maybe a situation like that where they feel that there's enough there for that year. But it's McLaughlin for me, Derek, and perhaps Alan McGregor. Dare I say it? And I know this will be controversial, but perhaps McGregor in Europe for me, where it's a different style of football.
Interesting, yeah. It'll be interesting to see who Giovanni Van Bronckhorst opts for on Saturday, and then going forward. Right, well, just at the end of the show, thanks to everyone, incidentally, for all the interaction. It really is greatly appreciated. Apologies if I never got to your comments. We're going to do our season predictions. You can see mine's and Johnny McFarlane's on the Rangers Review website, folks. But while I've got Joshua and Stevie on, we'll run through our predictions. So, first of all, we'll start off, Joshua, with you. Top goal scorer. Who's going to be a leading marksman this season?
I've not actually thought about this. This is going to be off the top of my head. You presume Morelos, because you look at that period when Van Bronckhorst first came into the club. I think it was his best football at Rangers. If he's fit, if he has a whole season at it, as Stevie said, he's not really had a complete season. Maybe this is the year when he can do it. He's a bit older now, a bit wiser, so I think it will be Morelos.
Stevie?
James Tavernier to hit his record. Top amount of goals for us as well. Tav for me.
Yeah, well, I think I'm going to go for Fashion Sakala, since he said he's going to hit 24 goals this season. I like that positivity at the open training session the other day. In terms of, in terms of assists, Josh, I know you love the assist chart. Who's top in the charts for you?
I don't know. I mean, Ryan Kent's assist numbers went under the radar the second half of last season, and his underlying creative numbers were far improved as well. But I've just been speaking a little while ago about how he's playing inside a little bit more as well. So I don't know. I'm going Matondo. Let's go a little bit left field. Matondo, based on the couple of caveats that we've seen, looks like he's got quite a good final ball. So I'll say Matondo. Although I would like to say, Derek, I think the assist chart is nonsense because you've seen
wow.
You see, it's the worst stat in football, isn't it? Because it's a classic example. You can set someone up for a 40-yarder and you get an assist. So we'll say the expected assist chart. We'll come back to that at the end of the season, Derek. That'll give us a better idea.
Matondo for Joshua. What about you, Stevie?
Matondo for me also.
Yeah. I'm really excited to see how he gets on. Okie dokie, let's move on then. What else have we got here in terms of Player of the Year, Joshua? I know we're very, very early.
These are tricky without the season even starting.
This is the question I had to answer on my article online from the Boss Man. So I'm setting you up here. Who's going to be the Player of the Year?
Do you know, I think it might be John Lundstrom this year. He will play the majority of games. He can fulfill a number of different roles, whether that's passing out the back and being the deepest midfielder and taking risks, running beyond, going box to box. Seen his importance in old firm games, but he's going to be the first pick in that area, and he's now got the benefit of being a fan favourite. So I think first full season in the team, not for the first full season at the club, I think it might be John Lundstrom this season. Sorry.
John Mclaughlin, that'll be something else. I've predicted Tom Lawrence will be up there. Stevie, who do you think will be the Player of the Year this season?
Tom Lawrence.
Wow.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that Tom Lawrence will, in an ideal world, will get between 12 and 15 goals, and I think he'll become a real favourite, especially when he belts one in against our rivals as well. So I think that'll take him up quite a wee bit. So yeah, I'll pump for Tom Lawrence.
Yeah, we get quite a few people agreeing with our prediction there, Stevie. In terms of unsung hero, Joshua, is there going to be someone that's going to be that's going to be fantastic for Rangers that people don't necessarily shout from the rooftops about? Tell you who I put in as my unsung hero of the season, James Sands. What about you?
Yeah, I think the unsung hero is quite often Conan Goldson for me. I think as a defender, he's improved so much. He made some fantastic recovery tackles against Tottenham at the weekend, where I just thought his interventions were really, really good, really clean. He's always there. He's the kind of defensive bedrock. So I think Goldson might go on and have another excellent season. And also fancy Yilmaz. I think he'll hit the ground running. As I said, in terms of the club that he's coming from, the club environment that he's coming from, I don't think it'll be too difficult for him to adapt to demands at Ibrox. I think he'll have a really good season as well.
What about you, Stevie?
I don't mean to be copying you here, but I think James Sands, impressed with him in pre-season. I think he's looked like he's adapted more often. And more importantly, Derek, that last week after the West Ham game, he stopped traffic in his car and let us cross the road outside Ibrox. So for me, let's start the James Sands propaganda. He's going to be the surprise player of the season for me.
Yeah, what a guy. James Sands, top man. And in terms of youth players, who's going to be a player that makes an impression on the first team? We'll start with you this time, Stevie, so that you're not accused of copying me. Who's going to be the player that makes an impression, makes a step up into the first team this season?
It's good to go before Joshua as well, and before he names 6 players and pretends that at the end of the season that he got that. But young player of the year for me this year will be Charlie Mccann. I think that he has shown the right attitude, and I think he's shown the right ability to kick on and kind of. I think that he'll be fleeting, but I think next season, the more the season goes on, I think we'll begin to see so much of him. So yeah, Charlie Mccann for me.
Yeah, I've popped in Charlie Mccann, Joshua. I know Alex Lowry is the one that many people think is going to be the next big thing. But for me, Charlie Mccann, and speaking to him after that training session, he's a confident young lad. He wants to fight for a first team spot. I like that. And from the sort of performances I've seen of him in pre-season, Blackpool, I was very impressed, not only with his finish, but he just dictated play. I think he's going to be the man for me. What about you?
To be different, I'll say Alex Lowry. I mean, obviously he's not been involved up to this point, but based on the evidence of last season, if he can come in and replicate that, he's got a lot of competition for places. But I think this is his season to go in and push on from making an impact last season to make a real contribution this season. Also, I think we'll see Lovelace. Him and Robbie Ure up top if the B team looked really exciting playing together. Ure's only 17 as well. Really dynamic, can stretch play, pretty quick. So a couple of good, exciting young strikers in there. But Lovelace certainly at 16, the physicality already possesses. Obviously, we know how highly he's been rated. I think he'll get some game time at some point this season.
Yeah. And before I let you boys go, of course, the season starts on Saturday. Joshua, you'll be there for us. Stevie, you'll be there as well. Score prediction time. Stevie, are Rangers getting off to a winning start?
Yes. I'm going to go for a 3-0 victory. And that's not to be disrespectful to Livingston. It's not. They're a really good, hard-working side. Lots of respect from them. For them, I just think that Rangers will hit the ground running on Saturday, and I think we'll get off to a really good start.
Yeah, Richie agrees with you there, as does Kenneth. Joshua, what's it ending up at the on Saturday over in West Lothian?
I think it'll be tight. I think it'll be 2-1. It's just
Joshua, I'll not pick you up, mate, if there's any.
I think it'll be. It'll just be a difficult game. Obviously, as Stevie says, Livingston are a very difficult team to play. It's an early kickoff. It's the start of the season. I think it'll be 2-1. I do fancy Tom Lawrence to get a goal. I think it's gonna be a really difficult start to the season, but it'll be good to get a difficult one out of the way for Van Bronckhorst and co.
Yeah, I'm going to go 4-1 Rangers. And like Stevie says, I'm a big fan of Davy Martindale. He's done a tremendous job there. Based on the resources and what have you, it really is remarkable. Really good coach, and I think he'll certainly make it difficult for Rangers, but I think they'll have too much about them, and I'm going for a Rangers win as well. Okay, folks, that'll do us there. Thanks to everyone for taking part and interacting with the show. It really is much appreciated. This is a show we aim to do every month, just a look back, a sort of a monthly review of the campaign. So we'll do the next one at the end of August. Lots of big games coming up, so there'll be lots of talking points as well. Just a reminder of the ticker below, folks, if you want to subscribe to the website, we've got that amazing offer on just now. Just £2 for 2 months worth of coverage. We're practically giving it away. Head over to rangersreview.co.uk/subscribe for all the details. We're also giving away a signed first team home jersey as well. You don't need to sign up for that. You just need to sign up for our email bulletin, so it doesn't cost you a penny for that. Just head over to rangersreview.co.uk/email bulletins for your chance of winning that signed first team jersey. A big thanks to Joshua and Stevie. We'll be back again tomorrow morning for the morning briefing, looking ahead to that game on Saturday lunchtime. But until then, enjoy